Hello, and welcome to another episode of Divorce Discussions. And today I am really excited to have an international speaker on. So, Lara Thornley Hall exemplified the advantages of integrated living over seeking a work-life balance. She founded the Thought Renovations coaching and a Mathnasium franchise. Wow, that's interesting. And now she works with each business to kind of work together for deeper learning and for creativity and innovation. Laura is an Australian native, and she works with people on developing harmony through conflict, and not worrying about what is sometimes called imposter experiences as we go through personal and professional life. So, Laura, thank you so much for being here today.
It's lovely to be here with you, Marty.
And you have such a different take on how this divorce experience and how I'm going to use the term imposter syndrome. I know you don't, but I'm going to use it right now, just because I think people might be familiar with that. Tell us a little bit about what got you into this area and why this is kind of your focus area.
Right. For myself, I was working up the professional ladder, the professional rankings, and a lot of that was really because of my own imposter thinking. And the Imposter Institute looks at imposter syndrome. It's a lot more than just, oh, a lack of confidence. It's a real imbalance between the way I see myself and the way other people see me. So I was clocking up all of the resume builders, all of the promotions, all of the qualifications. I'm a CPA and a PMP and an MBA, and as I say, a partridge in a pear tree, trying to build all of my professional qualifications. And that was to cover up or to balance out what I didn't see as capabilities within myself because of
Yeah.
a difficult childhood. So this all came together for me when I did get divorced. It was like I felt found out. I felt like the incapabilities within me even were being seen in my professional life because of my divorce experience.
Right.
And so my healing and journey since that time is really what's brought me into a much more fulfilled life.
Yeah, and I think what you said is really important because I think we've all gone through this in our life where we want to do something, we have an idea, but it's like, but I don't have that certification, or I don't have that degree, or I don't have, who am I to take on this role, or to apply for this job, or to try this promotion, or who am I to step out of a job and become an entrepreneur? So how do you how do you help people with that? Because I think it's more common than we want to talk about. Like, I think everybody goes through this at some level, or am I off on that? What do you think?
Oh, I think it's so common. And I mean, I coach a lot of entrepreneurs, I coach a lot of executives as well. And I always say, I'm not an executive coach. I am the coach to the human who wears the executive suit. I'm not an entrepreneurship coach. I'm a coach to the human who is building their business, because it comes back to we are all humans first and foremost, and we have life experiences and limiting decisions about ourselves that really shape our internal landscape. And often what we're trying to do outside is to build something in contrast to our internal landscape, but then the disconnect can create such conflict internally.
Sure, sure. And I think you have a really unique take on this, Laura, because I hear, the imposter thinking or the imposter syndrome again, around professional life. But you are one of the first people that I've heard talk about it in personal life. So how does it show up for, and I know you probably work with women and men, how does that show up for humans
Right.
when they're what they want to portray the life to everybody else, and then actually the lived life that they're experiencing?
I actually see a lot of parallels between personal life and professional life. I know in the professional circles at the moment, there's a lot of layoffs happening, for instance, right? For me, in my own life, my divorce was like my personal layoff, right? And I felt like it was my personal life, my personal resume. I'd built this lifestyle. I'd built these things personally. My spouse and I were known for things. We had mutual friends, and just like a layoff professionally, where suddenly the career that you built, you're suddenly apart from, often in a moment. So then in our personal lives, these changes can be that dramatic, whether they come quickly or slowly. It's the personal resume that we've built. It's our identity, honestly. It's
Right.
our personal identity that we've built, which when married obviously involves our spouse and their, the combined circles. And then you lose contact with that personal identity. And that's really the challenge.
You know, I went to a workshop a long, long time ago, and it was such an interesting activity they had us do. Describe yourself and don't give your marital status, your parenthood status, and your professional status. Tell us who you are. And it was amazing. People were like, holy hell, who am I? Like, what do I do? I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a professional at this particular event. And when you take away that idea of I'm not a spouse, or I'm not a part of a we, I'm now a me, that's a
Right.
big shift.
It's a huge shift. And really, I mean, the way we are socialized from the get-go, it's all about the the way we view ourselves in terms of others, right?
Mhm.
And yes, there's the professional resume, but it's so much more than that. It's all of the connections, and our identity so often is reflective of who we've connected with personally and professionally. And to come back and to actually see yourself as that individual, yes, there may be connections and they may be wonderful, but as an individual, I love that exercise. It's the who am I?
Right.
What is my identity? What do I love? What do I give? What do I share? And honestly, I mean, we can really lose touch with that. Even to know, what do I prefer to eat?
Right.
If I travel alone, sometimes, it's easy for us to realize, well, I'm always catering for this person or for that person. What do I even like?
Yeah.
And we really lose touch with ourselves.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I also think, like, okay, I'm older, right? So I can remember when I was a kid, couples were introduced as Mr. and Mrs. John Smith. Like, the wife did not even have a name in it. And I mean, that's changing. And lots of women now keep their name even though they get married. That's what I did in my first marriage, and that my first divorce. I stayed Marty Winder, and then when I married my second husband, I just hyphenated. So that's where the Marty Winder Adams came in. And it's interesting because this is a little bit personal, but my husband passed away in 2017, and I'm starting to think, do I need to hold on to that Adams anymore? Or do I need to go back to, so there's all these different things, and why do we spend so much time thinking about this? Like, even women that get divorced, gosh, should I go back to my maiden name? Should I keep my married name? Does it matter if my last name is different than my kids' last names? Why do
Right.
we do all this stuff from your expertise and your insight?
It is fascinating. I mean, our name obviously is one of those key identifiers, right? And culturally, there are a lot of differences there. I mean, if you're familiar with people from some of the Latin American countries, they often have multiple names because they take the name of the father or the mother and all of these sorts of things. It's fascinating. From my own experience, when I got divorced, I'd taken on my husband's last name in my first marriage. When I got divorced, I went back to my maiden name, and then when I later got remarried, I then hyphenated my maiden name with my current spouse's name. And that was my own way of reconnecting me back to my family of origin, as dysfunctional as it may have been, because that reconnected me to myself.
Yeah, yeah. So we kind of did the same thing. That's interesting. And I know you're from Australia. I'm Canadian. I live in Texas, but I'm Canadian. So it's very common in Canada, and I don't know about Australia, but in Canada, it's very common for spouses to marry and not there's no exchange of names. It's just everybody keeps their own name. But this is so fascinating. I never really thought about this until you brought that up about how that name may be part of this imposter sense. Like when we go through the divorce and we're no longer Mrs. John Smith, but we keep that name, how that's maybe not in alignment with where we want to be in our life.
Exactly. I mean, I think with our name, with our core identity, it is such an important decision, really, and that's something that we can understand. We choose our name as adults, particularly as these life events happen. We have the opportunity to make a choice,
Yeah.
and to choose a name that reconnects you with yourself, whatever that means to you, is a beautiful opportunity to start to build that future
Yeah.
and build your future identity and really pull that together.
Yeah, and I got to tell you one other quick story. I'm taking up all your time on the, the podcast, but here's the thing that I think is so interesting. I have a really good friend who had a very bad childhood, was disenfranchised from her family or detached from her family, married, didn't like her married name. And she, after her divorce, she just randomly chose a name. And first and last, like she reinvented herself then. And I never knew that. I always thought that that was her name. So it's kind of fascinating how for her to not feel like she was trying to be something she wasn't, she just had to recreate, a whole new persona. And now she didn't change her personality or anything, but that identifier. So I think about this more. This is really interesting. Yeah.
It's fascinating with names. It actually reminds me all the way back to my childhood and a wonderful family that was in the school that I went to. And one of their children, his parents chose interesting names for their children. And the name he inherited, which I think went back to their original culture, the name he inherited or was given by his parents was Dougal. And he decided that he didn't like that name. So at the tender age of, honestly, it was between like 7 and 9 years old, he actually went and legally organized a name change, obviously with the support of his parents, and became Ben. And that was my earliest experience of somebody choosing their name and choosing their identity. And it really stuck with me. I always thought way back then, what a strong individual and what a strong family to recognize, wait, I don't feel like a Dougal, I feel like a Ben, right?
It's interesting when we think about something as simple as that and the impact it can have on bringing you into an alignment with where you want to be. That brought up another thought that I was having about this whole idea of imposter thinking through the divorce. What do you think, or how do you think social media plays an impact into this? And even with the clients that you're working with that sense of, I got to be out there, I've got to be visible, I got to be, everything's got to be perfect in my life, and I've got to be happy, happy, happy. How do you think that impacts on this whole imposter thinking?
I think it profoundly impacts it, to be honest, because one of the things is we're seeing everybody else's facade, for want of a better word, right?
Right, right,
So we more often connect with or associate other people with the facade that they've given us on social media.
right.
And then we, of course, see behind our own facade and the gap between trying to jack up how we portray ourselves in the hustle and bustle of daily life, whether that's on more professional social media or personal social media, to try and put that facade there. And the whole concept of imposter thinking is really feeling the gap between who we portray ourselves to be, which of course is how we want others to see us, and how we really see ourselves and who we really feel like we are. And so with social media, we sort of crystallize, and there's so much energy spent on what we're facing, what we're putting out to the world, what we're putting out to everybody, and that gap between how we really feel, that's the core of imposter thinking, which leads to that fear of being
Right.
found,
Right.
fear of people seeing behind the curtain.
And I think that's also why then when a couple does go through a divorce, everybody is just like, I can't believe this is happening. All we've got is pictures of you guys skiing and snorkeling and sitting around the Christmas tree, sharing hot chocolate with each other. And now all of a sudden it's a divorce. And so I think like a lot of my clients say, I wish I'd been honest. I wish I'd have let people know how dysfunctional things were in not everybody, and not posting it on social media, but even their families. They didn't even share with their families that there was, you know, emotional abuse or financial abuse or physical abuse going on in the relationship. And that's not the only reason people get divorced, but they didn't share these things. They didn't share their unhappiness or the fact that they weren't in love with the person anymore. Um, it's hard sometimes though to talk about those negative things because I think this comes back to we're so worried about what people think about us.
Right. And in all honesty, we're often also experiencing our own denial,
Sure.
our own disconnection between the reality and what we want to believe the reality to be, our own, if I only try harder. I know I can't tell you the number of times, if I only try harder, I can fix this. I can fix this. If I'm a good person, I can fix this. If I just try harder, I can fix this. And some of that is the disconnection once again with ourselves.
Right.
We can really connect with the change is needed for me. I need change and I've disconnected from who I really am. When we're really connected to who we are, then we've got the opportunity to share that with those that we trust.
Yeah. And I so think what you just said is absolutely critical. If the relationship is falling apart because you're doing something, you can fix it if you choose to. You may not want to, but if you choose to. But if the relationship is falling apart and the other person at least has some responsibility, you can never fix it unless they want to fix it too, right? We have to tell ourselves that. We have to remind ourselves.
Exactly, which is why the answer is always connect with self, heal self, know yourself, and dare I say, like yourself.
Yeah.
Be the person who you like, because sometimes we lose that as well, right? The
Right.
answer is always to connect with ourselves, and in some cases, honestly, to connect with ourselves and to disconnect with the outcome, right?
Right.
Because the outcome is often what we can't control. But what we can control is the connection with ourselves. And when we connect with ourselves and we know ourselves, we trust ourselves again, and we even like ourselves, then the outcome will be the best it can possibly be.
That is so positive. I have a little thing I clipped out. I think I printed it actually. I think it's one of those meme things off Facebook. I cut it out years ago and it's still up in my bathroom. It says, "Be the person your dog thinks you are." As a dog lover, I just love that because they think you're on top of everything. So
That's so beautiful because our dogs have unconditional love for us,
yeah.
and that's what we can learn.
What
If
if we
we
could do that? Yeah.
have unconditional love for ourselves, then we know that the future will be better.
Laura, this has been a fantastic conversation. I've had so much fun, and you've really given me a lot to think about with this. So, what do you think, out of all the things that we've talked about, what do you want people to remember today?
I really want your listeners, the ones who are at any stage in the process of divorce, from before to during to the recovery afterwards, to really understand your future is about yourself and reconnecting with yourself and remembering who you are is the key to your future, the key to your success, whatever success means to you, and the key to your happiness.
Fantastic. That is a great way to end this. Laura, if people want to reach out, find out more about what you do or get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yes, so my website is Thought Renovations, all one word, thoughtrenovations.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Lara Thornley Hall, and you can find Thought Renovations there as well.
Thank you so much. Laura, this has been absolutely fantastic. And like I said, definitely you've given me things to talk about. And we'll have to talk again another time.
That'll be great, Marty. Have a great day now. Cheers.